So, this guy with a kangaroo accent is going to talk about the early kings of Scotland. First of all, there's not a lot of information out there on the early kings, and the information we have is messy to say the least. It's hard to tell legend from fact, and even credible sources have different opinions. That being said, I'll do the best I can with the information I have. So let's get into it. Also, keep your eyes open for the notes. Going back to 839, the land we know today as Scotland was divided into smaller independent kingdoms. These kingdoms were either at war with each other or being invaded by the Vikings. All the land north of the Firth of Forth was geographically referred to as Pictland. Our story starts with the death of the Pictish king of Fortriu, Wen, and his brother who died fighting the Vikings. There were many claimants to his throne, one being the supposed king of Dalriata, Kenneth mac Alpine. Kenneth was said to be the son of a Pictish princess, which gave him a strong claim to the throne, as the Picts used the maternal line to figure out who should be the king, as the father of a child could be disputed, but not the mother. Kenneth invited all the other claimants to the throne of Fortriu to a meeting to decide who should be the king, and then killed them all. This made him the king of both Dalriata and Fortriu. It's through Kenneth the Scottish kings trace their royal bloodline, which is why he's considered the first king of Scotland, even though Scotland didn't exist yet. As for his reign, little is known about him. It's said he brought the Monmask reliquary to Scotland, a holy relic of St. Columba, which is a box that is meant to contain other holy relics. It's also said he tried to expand his kingdom south, but there's little evidence of that. When Kenneth died of a tumour, he left 2 sons and 2 daughters. Back then, kingship was decided through a system known as tenestry, where the throne was given to another member of the family bloodline who was considered the wisest, which was normally the person highest on the family tree. Kenneth's brother, Donald, becomes the king. He ruled for 4 years and helped enforce some of the laws his brother introduced to the kingdom, such as the rights of the church, but little more is known about him. After his death, Kenneth's first son Constantine took the throne. Constantine ruled during the height of Viking invasions. He lost the west coast to the Scandinavians, which included the once Gaelic kingdom of Dalriata. Constantine is said to be the last king of the Picts. Somehow. He died fighting the Vikings. Next was Ide, the youngest son of Kenneth I, and he ruled for only a year. During his tiny reign, his nephew Eohide became king of Altclud, soon to be known as Strathclyde, and a new rival for his throne, Geric, started rallying support. We don't know much about Geric. He might have been the son of Donald I, but there's no real evidence to support the claim. Ide was likely assassinated, with the major suspect being Geric. When Geric took the throne, he ruled alongside Eohide. Either they were friends, cousins, rivals, or maybe even something else. But they ruled over both Gaelic Pictland and Strathclyde respectively. Geric and Eohide ruled together for 11 years before being deposed or killed by Donald II. Donald ruled for 11 years and very little is known about him. It was in this time period where the Vikings and the Gaels fought many battles against each other, trading victories. Donald was killed heroically on the battlefield. The next king was Constantine II, who ruled for 43 years, and most historians agree that he was the first king of the new kingdom of Alba, which was previously what was left of Gaelic Pictland. It was during his reign the first use of Scot and Scotland was used in reference to the kingdom. The Picts seem to have vanished from history in this time period as well. Just to interrupt for a moment, if I was going to guess why the Picts vanished from history, I would say it would have to do with Constantine himself not being a fan and wanting to assimilate his people into one culture, and also the Gaelic Church. They probably didn't like another denomination running around, so they teamed up with the king to suppress the Picts, Later there were stories and legends about previous kings standing up to Pictish oppression, such as Kenneth I himself and Gregory the Great, who was really Garrick, even though no contemporary sources can back that. Constantine recognised King Aethelstan of England as his overlord, but later rebelled against him. The King of Strathclyde Owen, the King of Dublin Olaf, and Constantine himself fought against Aethelstan and his forces in the Battle of Branagher, and lost, giving the English a smugness they'd never recover from. Constantine abdicated the throne to become a monk, leaving Malcolm, son of Donald II, as the king. Malcolm managed to briefly bring Strathclyde into the Kingdom of Elba after King Edmund I of England invaded Strathclyde and then gave it over to Malcolm to secure an alliance. He then invaded the Northern Territories that were being held by the Scandinavians. He was killed while fighting in a shield wall with his men. At the death of Malcolm, Indolf took the throne. He managed to get control of Lothian, where Edinburgh Castle is today. This was after Northumbria was annexed by Wessex. He died on the battlefield fighting the Vikings who were raiding the east coast. The next king was Dove. Dove spent most of his reign trying not to be killed by Indolf's son, Coleen. He won a few battles against Coleen, but in the end was driven out of the kingdom or was killed by Cooleen's forces in the north. It was around this time period where you get the newly formed Scottish earldoms of Moray and Orkney. The earls, or mormers, recognised the kings of Elba as their overlords. When Coleen took the throne, his reign was uneventful, which could be a good thing, at least for the people he ruled. Coleen died under mysterious circumstances. It's rumoured that he was killed by the King of Strathclyde because Coleen captured his daughter. This part of history is messy, or at least messier than normal. The Chronicles of Elba have Kenneth II taking the throne after Coleen. But the Irish Chronicles state that Ablaif, the son of Indolf, took the title for 2 years. They probably both claimed to be the king and both had support, causing what might have been a civil war. Kenneth defeated Ablaif on the battlefield to secure his throne. Kenneth was also known as the fratricide, as he killed many members of his own family to secure his place as king. He wasn't the first to do so, but is believed to become a custom of new kings from then on in. Kenneth had southern ambitions and invaded Strathclyde and took Lothian back from the English. The English made peace with him by recognising Lothian as part of his territory. Kenneth wanted to change the succession rule to his next nearest blood to inherit the throne, cutting out other branches of the line of Alpine. This led other family members to conspire against him. He was assassinated by Lady Filina as an act of revenge for him killing her son. She seduced him into her residence, booby-trapped a statue, which then killed him with a crossbow bolt. That's pretty cool. Upon Kenneth's assassination, Constantine III took the throne, which made things even messier as Kenneth's son Malcolm held Cumbria and he wasn't going to bend the knee to someone who conspired to kill his father. Constantine was killed by a former friend and ally, Kenneth. Kenneth took the throne and became Kenneth III. He held the kingdom for 8 years, but was always looking over his shoulder as Malcolm, son of Kenneth II, still held a grudge against him for his role in his father's death. They eventually both met on the battlefield where Kenneth was slain by Malcolm, making Malcolm King Malcolm II. Malcolm II is where a lot of historians start their list of Scottish kings, as he was the first to unify Scotland's mainland. Malcolm had 3 daughters who he arranged to marry powerful earls to further secure his kingdom. His daughters gave him 1 grandson each. Duncan, the son of the Earl of Athol of the House Dunkeld, Thorothan Sigurdsson, son of the Earl of Orkney, later known in the Orkney sagas as Thorfinn the Mighty, and McBay, but better known as Macbeth, son of the Mormaer of Moray. Oh Macbeth, what did Shakespeare do to you? They grew up together in the king's household as friends, classmates and rivals. During Malcolm's reign, he teamed up with the King of Strathclyde, Ewan, to crush the Northumbrians, making Lothian part of Scotland. Ewan died of wounds due to battle, allowing Malcolm to absorb Strathclyde into his kingdom. Going back to Malcolm's grandsons, by 1018, Thorfinn was sent by King Malcolm to rule over Caithness and Sunderland. Duncan was sent to rule over Strathclyde, and as for Macbeth, in 1020, Macbeth's father Finlay, the Mormaer of Moray, was murdered by his rival Gilly, who took Moray as his earldom. Throughout Malcolm's reign, he expanded his kingdom south, taking more land in the English earldom of Bamburgh, which reverted back to being called Northumbria. He was driven out of Northumbria by the English king Cnut. In 1032, Gilly, the killer of Macbeth's father, was trapped in a house fire with all his supporters, and the house burnt to the ground, killing them all. Everyone suspected it was Macbeth's doing, because not only did he get back his father's land and title, he also married Gilly's widow, Gruach, who was the granddaughter of Kenneth II, and took Gilly's son, Lulach, as his stepson. Before Malcolm died, he made Duncan his heir. Like his father Kenneth II, he wanted the throne to pass to his nearest blood relative, that being his oldest grandson. He was ignoring the system of tenestry, which would have put Kenneth III's son before Duncan, and also Macbeth. Macbeth was younger than Duncan, but being the son of the oldest daughter put him in front. Malcolm II was the last king of the House of Alpine. Duncan of House Dunkeld took the throne, ignoring the system of tanistry, just like his grandfather wanted. To secure his position, he slaughtered all other contenders from King Dove's line who had the right to claim the throne. Duncan still had to prove himself as a king, so he invaded Durham and lost. Embarrassed by his defeat, he led an army up north to take on Thorfinn, who inherited his father's earldom of Orkney, and lost as well. Losing lots of credibility, he decided to pick a fight with Macbeth. Either Duncan thought Macbeth's forces were weak, or Macbeth was in open rebellion. Macbeth and his forces met Duncan's forces on the battlefield, and Macbeth won, with Duncan being mortally wounded. He died a few days later. After beating Duncan I, Macbeth and his wife Gruach took the throne as King and Queen of Alba. Gruach was the first Scottish queen known by name. Macbeth's reign was a prosperous one, marked by a 2-year pilgrimage to Rome where he gave money to the poor like it was seeds. He made the trip to Rome to help bond Scotland to Europe and talk to the Pope. He returned to a kingdom still loyal to him, which is quite a feat in those days. There were many years of good harvest, and his people, by most accounts, were happy with him. Queen Gruach was known to be charitable and gifted a lot of land to Celtic monks. But from the south, Duncan's son Malcolm led an English-sponsored army to attack Macbeth. In 1054, Macbeth's forces lost Strathclyde to Malcolm. This forced Macbeth to retreat to Moray, where he had the strongest support. With Malcolm's English army heading north, Macbeth and his forces made one last stand in the Battle of Lumphanan. Macbeth was mortally wounded and died a few days later. With Macbeth's death, Lulach, Macbeth's stepson, was proclaimed the King of Alba. He only ruled for a few months before being assassinated by Malcolm. When Malcolm III took the throne, that was the end of the Highlander Kings of Alba, and historians call his dynasty the Canmore line, meaning Great Chief. So I hope you all enjoyed my rundown of the early kings of Scotland. Special thanks to fightersgeneration.com where I got most of my gifts. If you have any questions or want more information, let me know in the comments.